And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Dune Betrayal. Now, with the release of the Dune movie in 2021, it brought a new fervor to this theme. And for a long time, there were no Dune board games. The original one that came out a long time ago, and then the estate stopped new copies of that being made until just recently. Well, Gale Force 9, who did put out the redone version of that Dune, has put out another game here called Dune Betrayal. And this one is what we call a social deduction style game. A game in which there are secret roles and you're trying to find people and betray others. That makes sense in Dune, right? Because Dune is all about betrayal, or a good chunk of it is anyhow. So let's see how that works in this game as we have the Harkonnen versus the Atreides. Let's check it out. At the beginning of the game, you're going to hand out these randomly to players, these identity cards, and the number of identities you use will be based on the number of players in the game. So there's always going to be at least some people from Harkonnen and Atreides, and there's always going to be at least one Harkonnen noble and one Atreides noble going at each other. So you're going to hand these cards out. Once you have your card, you're going to secretly look at it. You're then going to create your identity. Now, players have 3 traits that show their identity, and if you are a noble, you're going to pick Harkonnen and Atreides, doesn't matter what side you are. If you're an Atreides fighter, you'll pick Atreides and fighter, and if you're a Harkonnen fighter, you'll pick Harkonnen and fighter. So this is a Harkonnen noble. So I'm going to take one House Atreides card and one House Harkonnen, because that's what all nobles do. I mix these up so that I don't even know which is which, and put one on each side of my character. In this game, players are trying to have the score be on their side, the Harkonnen and the Atreides. And this is going to be done through 5 rounds. There are 3 action rounds, and then there are 2 targeting rounds. Before these rounds happen, everyone closes their eyes. The Harkonnen fighter or fighters raise their hand, and then the Harkonnen noble will look up and see them, and then everyone puts their hands back down. So the Harkonnen noble knows who the other Harkonnens are, and that's the only information that's really known. At this point, there's going to be a pile of action cards. There's going to be face-up cards in front of the players. If they're ever the same, you kind of reshuffle them. And each player in turn order takes a card and does something with that card. Some cards have an immediate effect. Show your trait to another player and view theirs, then shield both traits. So what that means is I'll show someone one of my traits and look at one of theirs. Again, I don't know which one's mine. At the end, it says shield. That basically means turn it sideways, because unless a card says it can target a shielded trait, no one can look at that trait again. So here's another one that says just look at another player's trait and then shield it. So here's show another player's trait to a different player, then shield it. So those are immediate. Then you have these will take place, these targeting rounds will take place during the targeting round phases, and some of them will take place at the end of the game. Once all the players are done playing 3 actions, taking them, and some of them you'll keep in front of you, you're going to keep all of them in front of you whether you play them or not. And this matters because the symbol at the top, you are trying to collect those symbols for points. And it shows you here which symbols you're looking for. And again, remember, this card would be face down. Players can't see it. But players can try to use the trait cards you take to figure out who you are. Then there's a targeting round. Each player has 1 attack and 1 defend card. In the first targeting round, you'll play one of these cards on someone. In the second targeting round, you'll play the other card on someone else. Again, using any cards that say can be used in the targeting round. Once this is done, everything is revealed, and we see how many points each side scores. Each side is going to get points for the 3 action cards that they've taken. Also, the Harkonnens will lose points if assassins were played on them. The Atreides will lose points if they have a sigil in front of them. And attack and defend cards will cause you to lose or gain points depending on who they're played on. So defending gives you a point if a defense card's played on you. Attack, a fighter will lose 1 point, but that's it. They can't lose more. Nobles lose 1 point for everyone played on them from a Harkonnen, and Atreides lose 2 if they're targeted. You're going to be moving this back and forth. Once everything's revealed, you'll find out which team won, and huzzah! Here we have some problems with the components. The card quality is not very good, honestly. It's okay at best, but it's a social deduction game. The pictures that they use, they're fine. These are just like, everything has this very dark look to it. Yeah, I know Dune's a bit dark, but I mean, the action cards are white on the other side, but then here, I don't know, there's not a lot to differentiate them. They all look very similar. The token that's used here to keep track of the rounds is this Dinko token. And overall, I mean, there's a lot of, I'll give them one positive thing. They definitely have a bunch of nice cards here in the mix that tell you reference cards and all. But the rules are okay, but it feels like an okay production overall. Now, when it comes to these social deduction games, there are some very strong standbys in the genre, whether it's Werewolf or The Resistance, and games of that ilk. And so it's hard to come up with a new variation of, how do I know who's who? I will give Dune Betrayal credit that they tried something new. Now, they cobbled together something new, I guess is a better way of putting it. Yes, we have team versus team. We've seen that before. One person knows some information. Great. You're playing cards to find out things. Fine. But it's doing so in one round. I mean, the game feels shorter because you have the 3 action rounds and then you have the 2 attack and defend rounds. And here is where I think the game has a critical problem. It's too short. You don't get enough information. Yes, I suppose, and the rules kind of tend to lean that way, and people who enjoy this game are going to say, it's up to the players to supply that. But the game does not give me a framework upon what to do. I can play an action, look at your card, and you look at mine. I now know 50% of the information about you. It's not really enough. I need to know both cards before I can say anything. I can't even make a really good guesstimate. The only thing I can do is if I see an armsman, I know that you are a warrior, but that's it. I don't know what side you're on. And if I see Atreides, I know you're either an Atreides warrior, an Atreides noble, or a Harkonnen noble. That's not a lot of information, and when someone looks at one, no one else can look at it. So the game feels like it's 1/4 of a game. There's a bunch of that looking at some stuff, a bit of talking. No one really knows anything. I guess the Harkonnen noble knows. They know everything, right? They know all the information. And so you could kind of point towards that and say, we need to figure out the person who seems to know everything. And then if we do that, who are they not attacking? But even then, you're playing the attack and defense cards. You're putting out tokens. The game feels like a pile of randomness. I know it's not quite a pile of randomness, but it gives you that sense. So when you compile that with the fact that you don't feel like you do many things, I mean, you're literally doing 5 things over the course of this game, it doesn't feel that great. I don't think social deduction games need to be a long marathon epic affair. But this one goes too far in the other direction and leaves me wanting. It leaves me unsatisfied. I don't feel like I did enough. Also, the Dune theme doesn't really come out here either. This could have been any game, probably. And I think that's a bit of a problematic affair, too, because people know. You know, the Harkonnen betrayed the Atreides. Spoiler. But not in this game. There's a lot of social deduction games that exist. You have to kind of stand out. This one stands out a little, but not in the way it wants to, by being incredibly mediocre. I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Dune Betrayal on the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment, just not that much fun.